Hi, Jacqueline. Welcome to the Your Dose podcast.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. Whereabouts in the world are you?
I'm in Canada, Ontario.
And what time is it there?
6:40 p.m. So it's almost
Yeah,
nighttime.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. Since I've moved to Australia, I always find it interesting to find out what time it is because it's usually complete polar
Where
opposites.
are you from originally?
The UK. So I'm
Okay.
currently living in Australia. When I was living in the UK, the time difference was a lot easier to connect with
Mm-hmm.
people from like all over the world, unless it was
Yeah.
obviously Australia. But Australia is literally like a day ahead, which I just
Yeah.
find crazy.
And like the opposite. Yeah.
And have you been working today?
No, today was actually my day off. I do have the flu.
Really?
Yeah. Holding
And
myself
you?
together right now.
Oh well, thank you for being here whilst you've got the
Yeah, no
flu. That
worries.
means a lot. And and what do you do for work?
Right now I'm in school, so I'm in my undergrad, studying
Wow.
psychology, and then after that, I'm going to be going to graduate school to be a psychotherapist.
I love that. So in the US, I wonder if it's similar. So you do your undergraduate like bachelor's in
Yeah.
psychology, and then do you do a 1 year master's in psychotherapy, or is it a
I
few
think
years?
it's like 2.5 years for the master's.
And
Yeah.
is and does the did you become interested in psychology based on your own
Yeah.
experiences?
Originally,
Yeah.
I wanted to be a nurse, actually, up until I applied to school, up until like a week before. But I made my account about 5 years ago, maybe, and I kept wanting to help people, and I was like, it's crazy to not go to school for this. So,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, for the listeners, I'll just, you have a page called That Anxiety Community. So, would you mind just sort of explaining a little bit about why this page began? You would have been quite young I don't know how old you are, but I
I'm
guess you would,
23 now.
yeah, so you would have been fairly young when you started this
Hmm.
page. Um, so yeah, what inspired you to do that?
Well, I have OCD, and when it mostly started, I was about 16 years old, and it took me many years to honestly to find even a little bit of relief for that. And I found that when I was in high school, um, my friends didn't have anything like it at all. So I found that even if they were anxious or had anxiety issues, it was always so much more different than OCD in particular. And I remember the first time I even Googled OCD and I saw like just what common intrusive thoughts were. It was the things that I thought were weirdest about me that like nobody should ever know. So then that kind of inspired me to have, yeah, like word vomit on Instagram basically and just have an account because when people comment that it makes them feel better, then that makes me feel better. It almost heals me in a sense, I think.
And have you ever struggled with being so open online?
Yeah. It's definitely hard being vulnerable. A lot of the stuff that I post can be embarrassing because it's thoughts that can be taboo.
Mm.
Um, but at the end of the day, if it's helping people, I don't mind.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
something that I initially felt uncomfortable with at the start. But what I always go back to is that if people might like me and you don't talk about it, then no one will talk
Hmm.
about it, and then nobody feels that sense of relief because then everybody feels weird, and you need to know that you're not alone in your
Hmm.
struggles.
No, I
So
totally agree.
so you mentioned that you've been diagnosed with OCD, and what age were you diagnosed?
Um, Maybe 17 or 18. Like my OCD was really, really bad. So I know a lot of people they get like misdiagnoses or it takes them many years to get that OCD diagnosis. That wasn't I got mine pretty much right away just because it was
Uh,
so bad.
And how many years do you think that you had been struggling with OCD prior to your diagnosis?
Um, well, mine started pretty much overnight. There was definitely signs my whole childhood that I was really anxious.
Yeah.
But I think it's hard to tell the difference between a kid that has normal fears and a kid that, is having an actual anxiety disorder. So when I look back on my childhood, I always had it.
Yeah.
Um, but what happened, my story personally, is when I was 16, I went on birth control. And when I went on birth control, I didn't respond very well to it. So I got really emotional and almost triggered a deep depression for me. And so with that, my immune system actually lowered just because I was like crying a lot, things like that. And then I got strep throat and I went on an antibiotic to treat my strep throat and I had an anaphylactic reaction to this antibiotic. And from that day, my OCD was like 20 out of 10. Like it was just overnight.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. And what
Yeah.
sort of ways did OCD show up in your life?
The biggest way would be health anxiety for sure. But it's interesting because when I had that allergic reaction, I wasn't even afraid of the allergic reaction. That's just when my anxiety levels started.
And what might have that looked like for you in terms of your health anxiety?
Oh my gosh, everything. Literally everything. It started with, I remember when I got home from the hospital, they had me on a bunch of medication and they had me on a lot of steroids, and the steroids induced a lot of anxiety. And so I remember my first panic attack, I called an ambulance because I'd never had a panic attack before. And so obviously when my throat is tight and my whole face is red, and I thought I was having a rebound allergic reaction, and I went to the hospital and they're like, no, this is a panic attack. I was actually shocked because it felt so physical and so real.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, what sort of symptoms were you experiencing when you had a panic attack? Obviously, you mentioned the
Yeah,
type.
so yeah, my OCD manifests very physically, so whatever I'm having fears of. So I remember one chunk of my life I was afraid of having Parkinson's, and when I would put on my mascara, my arms would literally like they would shake to the point where I couldn't put my mascara on. So when I have a panic attack where I think I'm having an allergic reaction, my throat it clenches. I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like my cheeks are swelling. I think it's
Wow.
just because my muscles like tense in weird places, but yes. Yeah. So it feels the same as an allergic reaction for a few seconds.
And do you still have panic attacks now?
Occasionally, but it doesn't nothing like it was. I'd say when I have a panic attack now, I get it under control very fast, so not typically.
And how are you able to get it under control fast? I mean, if anybody's, I personally struggle with anxiety, health anxiety, and panic attacks for. I mean, I was having like multiple panic attacks a day at one point, and it's crazy because I barely have panic attacks now. And if I do,
Mhm.
I kind of like know when they're coming on,
Yeah.
and I think I'm more. It's years of therapy, but I think it's more of like
Mhm.
I'm just going to let this pass, and I know that it's just a panic
Yeah.
attack.
I agree. I think just the more that you understand how your anxiety or your OCD works, the less belief you have in it. So you're like, oh, I know what this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think something that you posted recently, which really resonated with me back then, was that every single time you have a panic attack, it feels like this is the one where you're going to die.
Yeah.
Like, no
Yeah.
matter.
It feels like 99% like your instincts, like I need to get help. And there's like a little percent in your brain that's like, this is OCD, you need to calm down. And you have to really, really learn how to trust that it's OCD.
And have you, when you had your OCD symptoms, was there any other ways that it showed up in like other themes, or was it just mainly specifically health?
Um, I think the core fears behind all of it is health. Just something being wrong with me at the core fear. I've had the fear of schizophrenia. I've had pedophile or what's it called pedophile OCD. I think that's what it's called. I've had that as well. Just a lot of intrusive thoughts that would be very taboo. But when you look at what I'm afraid of, it's just something being wrong with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And going to the pedophilia related OCD, is that something that you speak about online?
Sometimes, but I find that's one of the ones where I get a lot of comments where people will be like, that's not OCD, that you're just saying it's OCD. And then that almost makes, not now, but back then, if I were to post it and somebody told me that that's not OCD, I would believe them in a second. I'd be like, oh my goodness, you're probably right. There's something wrong with me. But now I just roll my eyes because they don't know anything, right?
And if you could best explain to, so based on the fact that you've got schizophrenia related OCD, health OCD, you've got all these different forms of OCD, and then you also experience POCD,
Hmm.
but to you it's just another form of OCD. So how would you explain,
Yeah,
do you get what I mean? Just for somebody who's
I
listening
do. When
who
I was
might be
first
like,
going through,
what? Because I think that's the problem. People don't really understand that it doesn't really matter what the theme is. It's
It's
the
all the
underlying.
same. And that's what I was talking about with the core belief that I was having and the core fears of something being wrong with me. Because every single theme I would go through when I didn't have a great understanding what OCD was, it was like, oh my goodness, this is new, this is scary, this is totally different. But when you really pick apart the patterns of it, and this is where CBT was really helpful for me, of how the patterns of your OCD work, it's all the same. It's you having a fear, and then it's almost like your brain is trying to trick you that that's what's happening. So I'll give you an example with the schizophrenia OCD. When I was 16 and my health anxiety started, I was having very severe fears to strokes, blood clots, things like that, to the point where I couldn't get off the couch. I was just afraid of everything. And I was also afraid of allergies. So I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, things like that. And when I finally had the light bulb moment in therapy that this was anxiety, because it was just so crazy to me that anxiety could have such strong physical symptoms. When I
Mm,
finally had that light bulb moment that it was anxiety, as crazy as it felt that it was, then I took a complete shift and I went, something must be wrong with me mentally. Like, this can't just be anxiety. This is too
yeah.
crazy. Like, other people with anxiety don't have this. And that's when I started being like, maybe you're bipolar, maybe you have schizophrenia. And I just diagnosed myself with as many conditions as there were. And in the sense, when you break that down, is that fear any different than the fear of a stroke? Not really. It sounds scarier to people who don't understand how OCD works, but it's all the same pattern.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny because I was like, I'm smiling because I can relate so much to everything you just said. And I remember when my I'd had health OCD all my life, but when
Mhm.
it really was triggered by something that happened, and I did the exact same thing, and it was like 3 months of just different themes about health, and then the schizophrenia one started. And I remember my therapist at the time, she was like, Emily, a sane person doesn't know they're going insane.
I
And I
heard
think
that
that's
so many times as
and I
well.
think that's when it actually clicked in my head. I was like, this is true. If I was actually going insane, I be aware that I was going insane?
I
Um,
wish it clicked for me then. It didn't. I started finding anything. I was grasping at straws. Any symptom, I was like, no, this is something. I think I went to the emergency department probably 2 or 3 times just to speak to the on-call psychiatrist, just to quiz them on what's happening. And if I got reassurance and then I got home and I remembered there was one small symptom that I forgot to tell them, I was like, well, obviously, if they heard that, they would have diagnosed me.
yeah,
So,
it's
yeah.
so funny because I would do the same with my health related themes as well. Whether
Mhm.
I was convincing myself I had cancer, I'd be like, I'd look online, Google everything, and then there'd be like one thing that could potentially be a link to cancer, and I'd be like, yeah, that's it. That must be it. I definitely have cancer, and then we'd
Yeah.
fixate on it, and it really is like so tiring. Um, I've
Oh,
personally got to a
exhausting.
point where I'm definitely like, I wouldn't say I'm like fully over my health anxiety. I think
Yeah.
it will always show up in different ways in my life, but I'm more able to control it now.
You asked about the panic attacks. Sorry to interrupt you. It's not so much that I wouldn't get them. It's just I'm at a point where when I do, because I still do get triggered sometimes if I watch a TV show or
Mm,
something like that. And for me, it feels like a choice. Like, it got so bad, my life. I was so depressed and my circle was so small, being on the couch, not eating, that I'm almost like that feels worse to me than having an actual disease. And
mm.
I almost like choose, like, even if something's happening, I just don't want to go back to that.
Yeah, and I guess, is there anything else that you've done to help manage your health OCD outside of like CBT, which you've said was really beneficial?
Well, I did the exposure therapy as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ERP, and has
Yeah.
there been anything else?
I've done medication, but I don't want people to think that I only got better because of medication, because I actually, like, you can do it without it too, because I know a lot of people with health anxiety are afraid to try medication.
Mm,
So I actually got better without medication first, and then I had a relapse, and I was just so, I didn't
yeah,
want it to go back to that point so much that I was like, just give me the medication. Like, I don't care. Like, I just don't want it to go back. So I found success with both. So I'm
and
on citrulline now.
out of interest with medication, how do you think it helps you? Like, in what way do you believe that it calms your OCD?
That's a good question.
I'm genuinely intrigued. But this is more of an intriguing question because I've heard that people say that sertraline in particular kind of like, you might think a thought, but it stops you from latching onto that thought so much, and the thought kind of
For
passes
me,
quicker.
I think like I definitely noticed when I wasn't on any medication that if I were having an intrusive thought and I were out with my friends and I was having a really good time, I could challenge that thought more. I think just because I was like have like happier levels. So I think what
Mm,
it kind of does for me personally is it lowers my anxiety levels and it combats that depression a bit, to the point where I can logically just challenge the thoughts because I still have all those intrusive thoughts, but they're just kind of like white noise almost.
and do you have any side effects at all from taking medication?
No, no, I don't have any. When I was really worried about that having health anxiety. Um,
Yeah.
One of the things that stopped me from taking medication in the first place was I convinced myself that it would like chemically change my brain and make me have psychosis, another schizophrenia fear.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And I think that the first 3 or 4 months that I was on medication, I had pretty bad side effects. It felt like I was like 100% more anxious, more OCD. I couldn't leave my bed. But then it got better. So
Yeah.
I kind
I,
of trusted that was the process because my doctor told me that that would go away after a few months. So I just stuck with it and it got better.
yeah. That's good because I guess a lot of people would maybe give up at that point because it's
It was hard
scary in
not
itself.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely hard not to. And I was having like my eyelids would swell every night. I was having nightmares every
No.
night. I couldn't fall asleep until like 5 in the morning. Like the side effects were pretty wild adjusting to it. But now I wouldn't say that I have any at all. No, which is
So,
surprising because I'm really sensitive to medication actually.
yeah. And also, like with your health OCD and having all of those side effects as well, you'd
Yeah.
think that but I guess it has to get worse to get better, doesn't it?
I think because I got better from health OCD before I did medication and it was
Okay.
just the relapse that happened. Um, I think I was just in a better place to manage that. So I never really had those fears after.
And just going back a bit, you mentioned that you, during this period of time, and I can really relate to this, you didn't really want to go anywhere and do anything when you were sort of like deep in your health OCD
Hmm.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Um, so, how did that affect your relationships, friendships in your life?
I didn't have any friends. Before I was 16, I had a really good group of friends. But I think just when all this happened, they didn't understand what was going on, and I can't really expect them to understand what was going on. So when I isolated myself more and more, I didn't have anybody but my boyfriend at the time, who was really great, and my parents. Yeah. So it was really hard, but yeah.
So, how did your boyfriend support you? I guess this could be a good like
Probably
question.
in every way imaginable. He took me to every doctor's appointment, and it was pretty crazy. Like it was impressive to me because we're not together anymore. We're still friends, but this was just in high school. So I was impressed by his ability to support me. So he went to all the appointments with me. He would drive me to my therapy appointments. And so my biggest thing with OCD that affected my life was the fear of eating foods. So he would sit with me and while I was afraid and I'd have panic attacks and he'd hold my hand and he'd make foods with me. He'd advocate with me a lot. I know that it's kind of hard because I know that reassurance isn't good, but at the time we didn't know that reassurance wasn't good. So he wouldn't have like any peanut butter and things like that, which was bad in the long term, but we didn't know that at the time. It was supportive to what we knew.
Yeah, that's crazy at that age as well. And he was just kind of
Yeah.
just going along with the whole thing to make you feel
Hmm.
better.
Yeah.
How do you think that somebody could best support a friend or like a partner with something like health OCD?
Well, see, then that relationship ended. That was just my high school relationship. But I'm in another relationship now. And it was a total learning curve because he had no idea about mental health at all whatsoever. And so I had to teach
Okay.
him that. And I think It can definitely be hard because when you're panicking, you don't want to teach somebody how to help you, but you really have to. Like, you can't really just expect them to know what to do. So I found a lot of benefit in sitting him down in moments where I wasn't panicking and being like, if I'm having a panic attack, I'm not going to want to put the TV on to distract myself. But if you put a show on like Friends, it might help snap me out of it. So I think giving him specific things that helped a lot. So if I don't really have panic attacks anymore, but he would give me a granola bar. He would do things to like change my senses and just distract me, put a comedy on, and it helped a lot.
Yeah, that's so good. It's like almost
And
like a
also,
toolbox.
yeah, but also educating him on how reassurance works helps a lot because if I'm in the moment where I want reassurance, I'm almost going to manipulate it to be like getting my reassurance. But when
Yeah.
I'm in a moment of like less anxiety, I can explain to him why reassurance perpetuates that OCD cycle and to reassure me as a person, but not reassure the OCD.
And did your parents like understand what was going on? I mean, I look back when I
Not at
was
first, no.
having these health thoughts, and it was quite funny because I had all my life, this is when I knew I had OCD. When I knew it was OCD because
Yeah.
um, this was something that I'd done since I was like 14. And basically, every single month, I would convince myself that I was pregnant, but I wouldn't have even like had sex. And I remember when I
Yeah.
was younger and I used to do it, and my mum would just be like, Emily, like you can't possibly be pregnant. Like you've not.
Yeah.
This is impossible. How can you? How can you? How can you? And for all those years, she just went along with it. And I'd ring her, and then I actually had a boyfriend, and I was having sex. But I was on contraception, like whatever. And I'd
Yeah.
ring her every month, and I'd be like, Mum, I think this is the month that I'm pregnant. And she'd be like, you're not pregnant, Emily. And I'd be like, no, I am. Like, honestly, like, I'm
Yeah.
definitely pregnant. Like, my period's late.
Hmm.
She'd be like, have you done a pregnancy test? I'm like, yeah, but it's saying no, but I'm just going to wait a few days because I definitely could still be pregnant.
There's
And
always like a doubt. There's always a reason.
yeah, and I'd be like convinced, absolutely convinced that I was gaining weight
Hmm.
and all the, oh, whatever. And um, my mum, it's funny because I actually talked to her about it now, and I'm like, Mum, that was so obviously OCD, but
Hmm.
she didn't know. Like in her generation, I think she just thought I was stressed or like anxious or something,
Yeah.
or just a worrier. You're just like Emily's just a worrier. I think that's
That's what
kind
my
of what
mom
it.
thought about me. Yeah. No, to answer your question, my parents did not understand at all whatsoever. So they're great now. But I remember in the beginning, my dad
Yeah,
actually yelled at me one time and I was having a panic attack and he said, if you don't stop, you're going to become schizophrenic. And that's not how
no,
it works at all. And I think that's what started the, oh my God, something's going to happen. Um, so in the beginning, no, they always supported me. They spent countless nights up on the couch sitting with me. They had to work the next day, and I'd be crying over a brain tumor, cancer, things that felt real to me, but in their head, they were like, nothing is happening. But so they were good in that aspect, but it took a few years for them to understand how it worked and me as well, because I feel like OCD is becoming more understood now than it was like five,
so
10 years
much more.
ago. Sorry, my dog is crying to be let in. I'm just gonna.
Oh, go let the dog in. Yeah, no, I've had the similar things, but I just look back and oh, cute. What's the
She's
dog's
like an
name?
attention, Casey.
Casey. Has Casey been a good like anxiety support for you?
Yes, because I would spend days inside just like anxious and then not even realize that like I'm not getting fresh air at all. But when I grew up, I was always in sports, doing everything all the time, the structure of going to school. And then when I got her, she's a border collie, so she forced me to go out
Yes.
for hours a day and walk her. And even when I don't want to go to bed, she like licks my face in the morning. I'm like, ugh, so then I have to go walk her.
Oh, I guess on that note, is there anything that you do from like a lifestyle perspective or don't do from a lifestyle perspective that you think helps you manage your OCD?
Yeah. So the thing with OCD is that slowly, it's like you don't even notice it. Like one avoidance compulsion at a time, your world gets smaller and smaller. You get afraid of driving, so you don't drive places anymore.
Mm,
I wouldn't go out to a restaurant because I'd be afraid of having a panic attack in front of everybody. So then you don't really notice at the time, but when you look back at your life from like 3 years ago, everything's completely different. So that's something that I've done now that I feel that I've recovered from OCD is I work on opening my life back up. So this last year, I started playing soccer again and just doing things that one at a time that put me out of my comfort zone where I have anxiety, but a level that's manageable.
And do you find that you have anxiety in like social situations? Would that be an issue with going?
Not as much. I definitely have. I think I struggle with social anxiety like a lot of people do, but not to a disorder extent.
And so have you finished completely having therapy now? Are you at a point where you can just
Yeah, I go back
go
once
through?
every couple months just for almost like a tune up and just to see where we're at, kind of talk about things. But now it's kind of like talk therapy rather than like doing CBT or exposures. Yeah,
That's pretty crazy, isn't it? To think that, what, like 5 years ago, did you say you started your account?
something like that. Yeah.
And now you're at a point where you're literally helping so many people, and then
Yeah.
in a few years to come, you'll be a
Yeah.
psychotherapist helping
Well,
even
I
more
was so
people.
unstable at the time that I couldn't work. I wasn't going to school. And I didn't even think it would be possible for me to go to university anymore because when I was in elementary school, I was an honors student. And then when I went to high school, I was getting immediately like 50s. And it was very poor on my self esteem. So I just thought I wouldn't really be able to contribute to society. And that was part of my anxiety. And so it's pretty crazy now to be able to be in university and do that stuff. Yeah. I didn't think it was possible.
So you technically have become more of a confident person over time compared to back then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And how
For
do you
sure.
think that's how do you think you've become more confident?
Can you just repeat the question so we don't have to like cut that edit out?
How do you think you've become more confident? Because I think this sounds like a lot of self doubt there to think that you never thought that you'd be where you are now.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I grew up with a lot of people who had mental illness around me that didn't take care of it. And so I think that was contributing to my fears of now that I was diagnosed with OCD, my life was over. And a big portion of OCD is underestimating your ability to cope with something. And so the
Mm.
more that I grew up and was in the world, like the real world, and would work with people that did have like diabetes or had a stroke and things like that, it almost took my perspective from black and white, which it was before, that if something happens to me, my life is over. And meeting people that would be going through something and still living their life, I think that built my confidence up because I kind of live in the gray area now instead of just it's all or nothing. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, no, it does make a lot of sense. It's basically
Yeah.
like making yourself believe that anything's possible. Ultimately, we don't
Yeah.
always
So
have to think that
before,
bad things will happen, which is
yeah,
what our brain does.
before it was like I'm going to go to school or I'm not going to go to school or I'm going to have a job or I'm going to be a complete failure. And now it's just more like instead of focusing on it is or it isn't, just how can we, do something that's going to make me happy, right? So I don't really worry about things in like black and white as I used to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm
Hmm.
intrigued because you have a lot of followers now on Instagram and you've really built this incredible community. You must get so many messages. I can't even imagine how many messages you must receive from people, saying that they're going through what you're going through. But back when you were 18 or however old you were, what sort of things were you posting on there?
Well, it was less consistent for sure, which is why it's grown now more than back then. But honestly, I was like a mini therapist, which was like why I don't understand why everybody else saw me as becoming a therapist but myself. But I would just post things about like CBT, like challenging this, like just all the stuff that I know now, I would post then in a form of a text post. And
Oh,
I
a
get the
text
same,
post. Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
so it's only growing now because I've done reels, which is I don't know, it's just blown up like crazy, but it was the same information. It's just the format changed and I just did it in shorter versions. Like before I would sit down and I would film a 10-minute video and it was good knowledge, but then I was like, if people's attention spans aren't going to be able to absorb that, how am I going to help them in a smaller video? So I just do smaller things now.
And so what in like over what time span has it grown? Like the past few years, or
The last like 4 months, I'd say.
seriously?
Yeah, so I had like because I had like 2,000 followers in the last like 4 months or so. It just yeah, just the reels completely.
That's crazy.
The more vulnerable I got, I found the more
The
views I
more
would
you
get
get,
too, because people would comment things like, "Oh, I can't have an original thought," because it's things that like I would do. And once I almost caught wind that like people commenting were like, "I do this too." I was like, "Oh my goodness, maybe I'm not such a weirdo I thought I was." And so then I'd post more things that I do, and then people were like, "I do that exact same thing." So the more vulnerable I got, even though sometimes it is difficult when I make friends in like real life, like and I joined soccer, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my goodness, I hope people who don't understand this, who I'm trying to become friends with, see this. But the more vulnerable I get, I find that it actually relates to people more. They just don't talk about it.
okay, that's really funny that you mentioned that, because I did a podcast a few weeks ago and I spoke
Yeah.
to about this exact topic with someone, and she was it will be going live this week, actually next week, and we were speaking about, she's all of the concepts of what she does is around feelings and like feeling our feelings, and I spoke to her about the concept of being vulnerable online and meeting people in real life, and sort of hiding the fact that I have a podcast, because
Yeah,
mental health
I don't tell people, yeah.
it's strange, isn't it? But yeah, it's such a big part of my life, and it's such a big part of your life now.
Yeah.
Like with the amount of followers that you have,
Yeah,
the
I'd say it's like
comments
the
and the
most
engagement.
new thing that I do.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's a weird concept, isn't it? That when you meet people, this huge part of yourself, you almost like keep it to yourself, because it still feels slightly uncomfortable to be vulnerable. It's a weird thing, isn't it?
I think because like my followers, I like they understand because they go
Yeah,
through it. But when I
yeah,
go out in public and I'm trying to like make friends with the girls at the bars and stuff like that, if they don't know anything about OCD, I don't want to just be like, oh, I have intrusive thoughts about
yeah.
being attracted to my dog. They're like, who is this girl? Like, they're not going to be friends with me. So it's hard to like find a balance with that.
Yeah. And so I get that, just on that topic. So you said that you have intrusive thoughts about being attracted to your dog. Is that genuinely a thought that you would have had?
Oh my God, yeah, yeah.
What do you think would that be like I guess the like strangest or like most, I don't even know
No,
what
I
you'd
get
call it.
like the strangest thoughts. Like, I'll give you an example. When I was going through the
Yeah.
schizophrenia OCD,
Okay.
I went to a doctor that I've been seeing since I was a baby. She's not like a medical doctor, she's a homeopathic doctor. So she didn't really have, she made things worse than they could have been. But I went there and I was like, I think that I have psychosis. And she goes, no, you don't. I have a patient who is schizophrenic and they believe that they're the Queen of England. And I was like, oh, okay, okay. So then I get home, and then my brain on repeat went, you're the Queen of England. You're the Queen of England. Do you believe that you're the Queen of England? Because if you believe it, then that means you're schizophrenic. And it's just like thoughts that, like, if I would tell
Wow.
somebody else, they'd be like, what? Because I remember I was having thoughts like this. Like, I looked at my dad and I was like, well, I'm kind of having thoughts that, like our orange cat that's looking at me is like the devil. And it's like I don't believe that, but like they're just it's almost like my brain was testing me. Like just the weirdest thoughts. It's like if you believe that you're like suffering from a mental illness that isn't OCD, right? And so at one point my dad was scared. Like he went with me to the emergency psychiatrist and was like not 100% convinced that something wasn't happening. But then the psychiatrist, like there was no doubt in his mind, which helped a lot. He was like, you're just anxious.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I was just about to say something and my train of thought's literally gone. 1 minute. I think that the reason why that's so interesting is that because you thinking that you're the Queen of England to a normal person wouldn't potentially go to this case of I've got psychosis or I'm schizophrenic. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why for people with OCD, or specifically for me with schizophrenia, is number one, I studied psychology, so I knew a lot about schizophrenia. I also,
Knowledge makes it worse.
this is what I mean, and then I also dealt with schizophrenic patients when I was working in psychiatric hospitals. And then obviously with my compulsion was always Google, researching on Google. So like I would become an absolute expert at every single topic. And I think that's the problem and I assume it's the case with other themes of OCD, because like my main theme was health. relationship OCD is actually one that shows up in my life when health isn't there so much anymore. And I feel like because health, like,
Yeah,
it
it
is
always
something that
switches. Yeah. Your brain needs to like focus on something.
yeah, because I think health OCD now for me is something that is more black, like, it's not, like, it's, for me, it's more something that I can control than it's factual,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it does.
Whereas relationship OCD for me is like, well, we'll never know. So does my friend hate me? I don't know. I could ask her, but I don't know. And it's like, I feel like there's more doubt for me in relationships. And so when I'm saying to my brain, actually, no, I don't have cancer, like, that's absolutely ridiculous. No. And I can do that now.
It's going to move to something you can't prove.
Then it's exactly where, for me, relationship OCD, can I prove my friend doesn't hate me? Can I prove? Yeah. Well, I can't really, because she might or she might not. Whereas cancer is very much like, yes, you have it, or no, you don't, in terms of like your... Do you get what I mean?
No, I do, absolutely.
Have you had that experience?
Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Have you had that experience with any other theme of, or is it would always be like just solely health?
Yeah, the more knowledge I would have on a subject, absolutely, that would affect me. I like completely lost my train of thought.
It's okay.
What did you say?
So it was just about
I have ADHD
relationship.
also, so.
Yeah, same. It was just about relationship OCD and whether that had ever shown up in your life when health OCD hadn't been there. Like, once you were kind of like, I guess, recovered from health OCD, did your brain then start to latch onto anything else, or?
Yes and no. So I find that there's always kind of something latched in the background. I just don't really believe in it that much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I just have a really active brain, I guess. The way the psychiatrist explained it to me is that a lot of times, like, he called it an engineer's brain, that if you have like higher intelligence levels, things like that, it almost works against you because you're logical and illogical at the exact same time. So it's like you said, becoming an expert at things. You're being extremely logical with diagnoses and like finding out what's wrong with you, but you're illogical in the sense that like you're totally blowing out of proportion the likeliness of something like that happening. With the relationship OCD, I've definitely gone through that. Mine is with self-doubt of, am I with the right person?
Yeah.
Are they going to leave me? Should I be leaving them? Almost needing 100% certainty of my future. And I find that one is harder for me because it's more difficult for you to talk about that with the person you're in a relationship with, because they might take it more personally than it is. Because if you say, I'm having intrusive thoughts about, am I attracted to you? That's going to crush them, right?
Yeah.
So I find that one is a little more difficult for me to go through. I just kind of in one ear out the other. I think the way that I helped that one, is just, instead of it being black and white, am I with the right person or am I with the wrong person? It's not so much about, are you with your soulmate, but are you happy? Are you in a state? Like, it's just finding that middle ground, you know, not putting so much expectation about like you needing to find your soulmate or the grass is greener on the other side that your OCD is going to latch onto, and just being like, am I happy? Is this something that I can live in the middle with?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, and when I've done that in the past, is that the more that you understand OCD and the more that you understand yourself, when these thoughts do come along, you can be like, actually, come on, like, we're doing these.
It's almost like
we're
being
doing
annoyed
these.
at myself. Yeah,
We're doing these patterns again, and you're more aware of it. Whereas years ago, I looked at my relationship patterns and the relationships I was in, and I used to do that a lot. But I wouldn't have known that it was OCD. I just, in the back of my mind, is this person right for me? I don't know. But actually, it definitely probably was OCD creeping in. And I think, the more you can understand yourself, the more that you can sort of manage those thoughts.
Yeah, the relationship I'm in now, it doesn't affect me because I just kind of say, oh, whatever, to the thoughts I have now. But before, it's almost like whatever thought I would have, intrusive thought, it's like that was the truth. So it's like if I had an intrusive thought about maybe this person's not right for me, like I'd break up with them. I'd be like,
That's because
no,
you didn't know it was, you wouldn't have known it was OCD. To you, that thought was real.
Yeah.
So just quickly, I want to just touch on ADHD because I've spoken to a lot of women recently who have been weirdly seem like getting more diagnosed in adult life. I think it's something like OCD where people are becoming more aware of it. And so how has ADHD shown up in your life?
Well, with girls, I think a lot of the reason they're diagnosed later is just because sometimes it manifests differently. Like it can be, and for myself, like me and my brother both have ADHD, but for him, he's more hyperactive, can't
Yeah.
focus. For me, it was more emotional. So I found when I was going through anything like a bad anxiety bout, um, that's when I would find it more. Like I couldn't focus on my homework and stuff then. But other than that, it was just emotions. Like it was total emotional dysregulation. In that way, it was a mess. Yeah.
So interesting, because my brother also has ADHD and I haven't been diagnosed, but I'm like, really want to, but it's such a long process apparently to get
Yeah.
diagnosis.
Costs a
Have
couple
you
thousand here. Yeah.
have you
I've been to
been through
so
that
many like
process to get diagnosed?
I didn't go through like the particular one. Like I just they said, okay, your brother has it if she is raised the same, like if she shows the same things, then she has it. And then when I went through my diagnosis for OCD, they're like, you're showing signs of this, but like you're gonna have to find somebody that's particularly specializing in ADHD, but it's gonna be a couple more $1,000. And I just cut it off there. I was like, the label
Yeah.
doesn't matter to me. Like I'm just gonna treat it as I would, right?
And do you have anything at all that helps you manage ADHD, or do you just know that it's one of these things that will show up when you are in these like high stress
It's in like the
situations?
craziest little ways. My mom is amazing at help managing our ADHD because my dad has it, my brother has it, I have it, but she doesn't have it, but all of her sisters have it and everything. So I find like she makes us put things in clear bins, for example, instead of like darker bins because if we don't see it, the things in front of us is just totally gone. Like it's little ways that we manage it. The biggest way that ADHD is hard on me is my impulsions, or sorry, just being impulsive, like with creative things. Like I want to do this thing right now and then I won't finish that project. That's been the
Yeah.
biggest struggle for me.
That my life. I'm
Yeah.
laughing because I'm like, I was with a friend this weekend.
Mm.
She's actually in her 30s and she was diagnosed a year ago. And she was like, if I had been diagnosed when I was in school, I would have been, not that it matters, she was like, I would have been so much more successful. And because I would have
Yeah.
actually been able to do things faster. And I was like, I have started about 4 or 5 businesses that to me seemed like a great idea. And like,
Yeah.
I will chuck money at things, whether that be
Work
business
on it for
ideas.
20 hours straight. No
Yeah,
food, nothing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the next day I'm like bored of that now. I need to move on to something
I'm done
else.
with that. Yeah.
And something that I was really, really bad at with him when I was younger, and this is actually the longest job I've ever been in, but it's job hopping. And I would stay in a job for 6 months, max a year, and I'd be like, novelty's over. I want to be onto something else. And everyone just thought that I was like not committed or,
Well, the
but
self-esteem that comes with ADHD is like you're lazy, you're not trying
yeah,
hard enough. It makes you feel
but
like crap.
yeah. And I think I always felt like that. And I remember my friends being like, you can't stick at a job. Um, and looking back, I just thought it was a me, like, it was a me problem. I mean, it was a me problem, but if
Yeah.
only I'd have known that it was ADHD that was making me do that. Like it wasn't that I just got
Mhm.
bored and I was like, but I would be impulsive and I'd be like, I would honestly make the decision within like the space of a week, and my parents would be like, "Are you sure you don't want to stick it out? Are you sure?" No,
I
I'm
know.
done. Like I
Yeah.
am done, and I have to leave. And as soon as I get something in my head, I've got to go.
Thing
I'm in
is
that.
people with ADHD are they're so talented and so intelligent and creative. It's just finding a way to regulate themselves to follow through with that stuff. So even
Yeah,
like my brother's fiance, she also has ADHD. My boyfriend, these are undiagnosed, and I know it's not good to self-diagnose, but it's like when you have it and you just see it so strong in somebody, you're like,
yeah,
oh, they're really similar to me. So my boyfriend probably has it 10 times worse than me. Every single morning he's losing
really.
everything all the time, forgets everything. His memory is like a goldfish. So us being in a relationship together, it's almost good because we have patience for each other, but at the same time, it's just a mess. Like it's a
Yeah.
mess.
See, the memory thing's really funny because I went through this. Another one of my OCD health anxiety things was that I had dementia,
Yeah.
and I would I'm really bad with names, but I've learned that that's actually an ADHD thing because my brain, to
Yeah.
me, a name is like, and this sounds awful, but it's not. I don't mean it like this, but it's such an insignificant part of like what I'm thinking about. So like I work in a like a members club sauna, and the amount of people that come in and introduce themselves to me, and then they come in the next day, and I'm like racking my brains, and I'm like, I don't even remember. I actually have no idea, because as soon as that person's gone, my brain's on to the next thing. Like, and that's kind of how it works. And so it's to me, a name is so insignificant. There's been so many times where I've like met someone and I've been so embarrassed, and I've been like, I actually don't remember their name. Had to go to the toilet and like search them, try and find their name to search them, because I'm like,
with ADHD, like the way memory works is that the way you're encoding your memory is the way that you're remembering it. So if you're not actually ADHD, you're not paying attention when they're telling you the name, which is why it's not in your long-term memory. So your brain is so scattered with a bunch of thoughts up here that you're not actually paying attention to it in the first place. So it's not you forgetting it. It was just never there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's very... Is your brother on medication for his OCD?
No.
ADHD?
So for his ADHD, he, when he was a kid, they tried Ritalin, I think, but it made him very depressed and angry as like a little kid. So they took him off of it. Yeah.
Yeah, my brother was never medicated either, but oh my gosh, he was...
Really
he was very much
like I'm
the
an
hyperactive side.
He gets like 50%, and he's like, "Get me out of this school system." So it's interesting how like different we are, but I have to really like kick my ass to be able to do my schoolwork. So it's hard. Like I can't do my schoolwork unless I find a way to kind of hack my ADHD. Like, do you ever watch a TV show and you're like, I want to be exactly like that character? Then your mind starts going over the next 20 hours. You're hyper focusing on something like that, right? So I have to like tap into that almost. So if I want to do my homework, I have to watch like Legally Blonde or something where she's studying in it to be able to actually study.
Really? That's so interesting. So you need that like motivation of watching somebody else doing it to hyperfixate to do it yourself. Is there anything else? Sorry, no, go on.
Well, when I'm hyperfixating, I can do that for like 20 hours straight. I won't eat food. Like my mom will come in here with like bagels and stuff like this. She goes, eat, like you need to stop. But I know that if I get interrupted by something, I'm going to drop the project. I won't ever pick it up again, ever.
And you still do that now?
Yeah.
But if it's your only way of dealing with it and getting it done, then I guess that's
it's like
the
little
solution.
Tricks. Like I can't really get rid of my ADHD, but it's like little tricks to managing it. Just like knowing how you work, and like with my schoolwork, for example, for the longest time, I was getting so upset because I would sit there every single day and try and do it during the day. And then it's like, what? But I'm so good at doing it from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. So it's like, just do it at that time and take the pressure off yourself to fit into what a neurotypical brain would do.
Yeah. And I think that's it with like a neurodivergence is... I was speaking to someone recently about this as well on the podcast, and it's about having that flexibility. And I think for people like me and you, we need roles where we're not like stuck in like a box of like, this is what you have to do at this time. And like, I'm lucky that my full-time job is flexible. I'm fully remote, and like I work on my own schedule, and my CEO knows that there are certain times, there are also certain days, there will be certain weeks where I just won't be productive, and I can't get out of like this like distraction phase. But then I'll probably get like a month's worth of work done in like 3 days. Seriously.
Yeah, no, absolutely,
like, and I think
when
you know that
ADHD people, like, this is a generalization, but that their best role is like being self-employed, because when they're doing something they're interested in, they excel like crazy.
Yeah. And you also have your own schedule. So I've not got anyone telling me when to work or when not to work. Like, so you're saying that yours is evening. Mine's the first few hours of the morning, from like, if I can get up at 6 a.m., I will literally sit on my computer and work until 10 a.m., like uninterrupted, get so much done. But you're the other way. But
I'm that schedule. Like, that would be so great if I could get it done in the morning, but I just can't, no matter what. Because when I wake up in the morning, if there's even one thing that I have to do on my to-do list, like, even if it's small, like just tidy my room or like fold laundry, I can't study. I can't do anything until
it's so funny. It's so funny because I have such a thing about cleaning, and like if my apartment is I live in a share apartment at the moment.
Yeah.
which is difficult for me in itself because of like my cleanliness and whatever. But like there are, if I have a list of washing, tidying the house, whatever it is, no matter what I need to do at work, that is a priority because I cannot physically focus,
No.
and
Yeah.
because I need to tick that off. And it's always really nice to speak to someone who has the same brain, because I think to everyone
Yeah.
else, people like my friends, for example, just think I'm crazy. Like I just don't think because for them, they've never
They've
experienced
just
any of
never gone
this.
through it.
So they
Yeah.
just don't
From the
understand.
outside
And
in,
I'm
they're like,
like,
why don't you just do it?
yeah. And you don't understand that like I cannot physically sit down and do this because my bed isn't made, or like
No, it can't.
yeah,
And the thing is, my ADHD makes me the messiest, most disorganized person. And my anxiety wants me to be the cleanest person ever. So I'm sitting in a messy room and I can't focus unless it's clean. Like if I have
yeah,
clutter around me, I have a cluttered mind. So I'm like constantly, like I can't clean up after myself. So I'm constantly doing deep cleans every day because I want
yeah,
things as clean as possible. I love
yeah,
clean spaces. But
same,
it's a
same. In
struggle.
fact, I'm actually leaving. This is probably an ADHD thing, but anyway, I'm actually leaving my house because I can't deal with the space
Yeah.
anymore, because I'm actually moving house, because my brain just feels messy and I can't explain it to my friends that I live with. They're probably just like, what? Because to them, there's nothing wrong with the house, but I just can't deal with the space. Like it makes it
It's like
hurts my
visually
brain.
upsetting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. I
Well,
think that's why I can only study at nighttime because every single thing is done. If I have to walk the dog, I have to take like 3 hours out of my day to take her for a half an hour walk. Like
yeah,
it's so hard to do basic things with ADHD.
yeah,
Then mix it with OCD and it's just a
yeah,
whole
and
other.
it's just the worst.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to me, sharing all of this
Yeah.
really
Thank you for having me.
amazing like information. And I've loved chatting to you because I think, like I said, it's always nice to speak to someone who has a similar brain, and I'm sure that there'll
Yeah.
be lots of listeners who are listening to this with similar brains as well, which is always nice.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. And I guess like for the last question, as always, would be that if there was somebody listening to this struggling with a mental health issue overall,
Hmm.
what would be the one piece of advice that you would give them?
And I know it sounds so cheesy, but like the compassion piece, like you're already going through a hard time. You don't need to be harder on yourself by blaming yourself for being in that position. I would say as long as you're trying and being proactive and doing steps, like you're doing enough. You don't need to have it perfect. You don't need to be better tomorrow. You don't need to question when you're going to get better. Mental illness isn't going to ruin your entire life. It's just, one phase, even though it feels like your whole life. I mean, just give yourself compassion. It's not your fault that you have mental illness. So don't make it harder on yourself, I think.
Yeah, that was lovely. And I think me and you sitting here with very similar experiences, but
Yeah.
coming out of the other side as well, hopefully
Yeah.
gives listeners some hope that it doesn't
I
have
hope
to be
so.
that way forever. And also as well, like neither of us have sat here and said that we don't still struggle. We do, but
Yeah,
we
well, it's
know how
not
to
about
manage
getting
it.
rid of everything.
Yeah,
It's just like, how can I think I started getting better when I stopped asking, when am I going to get better? And when I started just saying, what can I do to like get my life back and have some happiness again? Everyone
yeah,
struggles with something and it's okay to have something.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jacqueline. I really
Yeah,
appreciate you
thank you for
speaking to
having
me.
me.
Glad that we could make it work, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah, you too.